The sun beat down on Dust Devil Gulch, baking the wooden buildings and turning the dusty streets into shimmering mirages. But the real heat wasn't from the sun. It radiated from Baron Silas, a man whose heart was as black as the coal that fueled his gold mines. Silas, a mountain of a man with a walrus mustache and eyes that glinted with avarice, surveyed his domain. He owned nearly everything in Dust Devil Gulch, from the saloon to the assay office, all thanks to the gold he pulled from the earth. Silas cared little for the men who toiled in his mines, risking their lives for a pittance. Safety regulations were a joke, and accidents were simply chalked up to the cost of doing business. But Silas's greed was insatiable. He pushed his workers harder, demanded more gold, and cut corners wherever he could. He was obsessed. The latest vein he was chasing, the mother lode, promised riches beyond his wildest dreams, and he wouldn't let anything or anyone stand in his way. He paced outside the mine entrance, barking orders at his foreman, a skinny man named Jebediah who trembled in Silas's presence. "Faster, Jebediah! I want that gold flowing like the whiskey at the Golden Nugget," Silas bellowed, his voice echoing across the canyon. He didn't care that the support beams were creaking, that the earth groaned under the strain of the digging. All he saw were dollar signs, glittering promises of power and influence. He had expansion plans, he had political aspirations. The mother lode was his ticket to a future where everyone would know the name of Silas Blackwood. The townsfolk whispered about Silas's cruelty, his ruthlessness, and the rumors of shady dealings that followed him like vultures. But they were afraid to speak out, afraid of losing their jobs, their homes, their very livelihoods. Silas held them all in his iron grip, a king ruling over a kingdom of dust and dreams, fueled by greed and the promise of gold. He was the villain in their story, a dark shadow looming over Dust Devil Gulch, and nobody seemed capable of stopping him. He smiled, a cruel, self-satisfied smirk that sent shivers down Jebediah's spine. Today, the mother lode would be his. Deep within the earth, beyond the reach of the scorching sun and Silas's bellowed commands, Amelia coughed, dust stinging her eyes. The tunnel had collapsed suddenly, a deafening roar of splintering wood and cascading rock. Now she was entombed, the air thick with dust and the smell of damp earth. Her lantern, miraculously still lit, cast a flickering circle of light around her, a fragile beacon in the oppressive darkness. Amelia wasn't a miner. She was the mine surveyor, charting the tunnels and assessing their stability. Silas had pressured her to work faster, to ignore the warning signs, all in the name of the mother lode. Now, his greed had trapped her. She tried to move, but a heavy beam pinned her leg. Pain shot through her body, sharp and insistent. She bit back a cry, knowing that panic would only waste precious air. Fear gnawed at her, a cold, creeping dread. The silence, broken only by the occasional groan of the earth, was almost unbearable. She thought of her parents, long gone, and of Rosa, her childhood friend. Rosa, with her grease-stained overalls, her bright eyes, and her unwavering spirit. Rosa, who could fix anything, who always knew how to make her laugh, even in the darkest of times. A tear trickled down Amelia's cheek, leaving a clean streak in the dust. She clung to the memory of Rosa, of their shared dreams, of the promise they had made to always look out for each other. That promise was a lifeline, a spark of hope in the suffocating darkness. She had to believe that Rosa would come for her. She had to believe that she wasn't alone. Amelia took a deep breath, trying to control her racing heart. She needed to stay calm to conserve her energy. She examined her surroundings, searching for a way out, a sliver of hope. The lantern light revealed a wall of rubble, a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. But Amelia refused to give up. She was a survivor, she was strong, and she had a friend who wouldn't rest until she was safe. She closed her eyes, picturing Rosa's determined face, and whispered a silent prayer, a plea for rescue, a testament to the enduring power of friendship. News of the mine collapse reached the surface like a shockwave. Fear gripped Dust Devil Gulch, but for one person it ignited a fire. Rosa, wrench in hand, dropped her work on a sputtering locomotive and sprinted towards the mine entrance. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging her onward. She shoved past the panicked miners and the wringing hands of their wives. "Amelia," she yelled, her voice raw with worry. "Amelia is down there." Jebediah, the foreman, tried to stop her, his face pale and drawn. "Rosa, it's too dangerous. The whole mine is unstable. There's nothing we can do." Rosa glared at him, her eyes flashing with defiance. "There's always something we can do. I'm going in." She knew Silas wouldn't risk his precious gold to save Amelia. It was up to her. Rosa wasn't just any cowgirl. She was a mechanic, an inventor, a force of nature. She had spent years tinkering with gears and steam, building contraptions that defied logic and impressed even the most seasoned engineers. And she had built something special, something she knew could help. "Get out of my way, Jebediah," she said, her voice low and dangerous, "or I'll go through you." She raced towards her workshop, a small shack on the edge of town. Inside, bathed in the glow of her welding torch, stood her masterpiece. The Iron Mantis. It was a giant steam-powered mechanical mantis, its metal limbs gleaming, its gears whirring with pent-up energy. Rosa had built it from scrap metal and sheer determination, a testament to her ingenuity and her unwavering love for Amelia. It was designed for heavy lifting, for navigating treacherous terrain, and for drilling through solid rock. It was Amelia's best chance. Rosa climbed into the cockpit, her hands flying over the controls. Steam hissed, gears ground, and the Iron Mantis lurched to life, its metal eyes glowing with an eerie light. "Don't worry, Amelia," Rosa whispered, her voice filled with a fierce determination. "I'm coming for you." With a roar of steam and a shower of sparks, the Iron Mantis lumbered out of the workshop and headed towards the mine, a beacon of hope against the backdrop of despair. The Iron Mantis was a sight to behold, a testament to Rosa's unique brand of genius. Its chassis was built from salvaged locomotive parts, reinforced with plates of hardened steel. A massive steam engine, salvaged from a defunct riverboat, roared in its chest, powering its complex network of gears and pistons. 6 articulated metal legs, ending in clawed feet, allowed it to traverse even the most uneven terrain. The front 2 legs were equipped with powerful drills, capable of boring through solid rock. Rosa had painstakingly crafted every detail, from the polished brass fittings to the intricate control panel. The cockpit was surprisingly comfortable, lined with padded leather and fitted with a series of levers, pedals, and gauges. A network of pipes snaked through the interior, carrying steam and hydraulic fluid to the various limbs and mechanisms. The air smelled of oil, coal smoke, and Rosa's signature scent of lavender and gunpowder. The Iron Mantis wasn't just a machine, it was an extension of Rosa herself. She had poured her heart and soul into its creation, imbuing it with her own strength and resilience. Every weld, every bolt, every gear was a testament to her dedication and her unwavering belief in the power of ingenuity. She knew every creak, every groan, every subtle vibration of the machine. It responded to her touch, to her commands like a loyal steed. The mantis's head, equipped with glowing goggles, swiveled, searching the landscape. The goggles were fitted with lenses that Rosa had ground herself, allowing her to see in the dark and through thick dust. A long, segmented tail, tipped with a grappling hook, provided additional stability and could be used to scale walls or pull debris. Rosa gripped the controls, her knuckles white. The fate of her best friend rested on her shoulders and on the capabilities of her magnificent creation. She had designed the Iron Mantis for this very purpose, for rescuing those in need, for defying the odds. It was more than just a machine, it was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of friendship, and a weapon against greed and despair. It was ready. Rosa was ready. They were going in. The entrance to the mine was a gaping maw, a dark and ominous portal into the earth's belly. Debris littered the ground, a chaotic jumble of splintered wood, twisted metal, and loose rock. The air hung heavy with dust, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. Rosa steeled herself, her gaze fixed on the darkness ahead. With a hiss of steam and a grinding of gears, the iron Mantis lurched forward, its metal legs finding purchase on the uneven ground. The ground trembled with each step, a low rumble that echoed through the canyon. The glowing goggles pierced the gloom, illuminating the path ahead. The initial tunnels were relatively intact, but the deeper Rosa went, the more unstable the mine became. Support beams groaned under the weight of the earth, and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Rocks rained down from the ceiling, forcing Rosa to navigate with caution. She used the Mantis's powerful claws to clear debris, carefully testing each section of the tunnel before proceeding. The air grew hotter, thicker, and the smell of coal smoke intensified. Rosa monitored the steam pressure, adjusting the flow to maintain optimal power. She knew the Mantis was strong, but even it had its limits. She had to be smart, resourceful, and above all, careful. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath one of the Mantis's legs. The machine lurched violently, throwing Rosa against the controls. Alarms blared and red lights flashed in the cockpit. Rosa fought to regain control, her hands flying over the levers and pedals. She engaged the grappling hook, anchoring the Mantis to a sturdy support beam. With a surge of power, she pulled the Mantis back onto solid ground, her heart pounding in her chest. That was close, too close. She took a deep breath, reminding herself why she was doing this. For Amelia, she couldn't give up, she wouldn't give up. Rosa bypassed the collapsed section of the tunnel, using the Mantis's drilling claws to carve a new path through the rock. The machine strained and groaned, but it held. Rosa pushed it harder, determined to reach Amelia before it was too late. The tunnel narrowed, the walls closing in around her. She was getting closer. She could feel it. A memory flickered in Rosa's mind. A summer afternoon, years ago, by the creek that ran through Dust Devil Gulch. Amelia, her hair braided with wildflowers, was sketching in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. Rosa, covered in mud and grease, was tinkering with a broken clockwork toy, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "What are you drawing?" Rosa had asked, wiping her hands on her overalls. Amelia had blushed, hiding the drawing. "Just ideas." Rosa had snatched the notebook, revealing a detailed sketch of a flying machine powered by steam and clockwork. "Wow," Rosa had breathed, impressed. "That's amazing." "It's silly," Amelia had mumbled, embarrassed. "It'll never work." "Oh, don't say that," Rosa had exclaimed, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. I'll help you build it." They had spent the rest of the summer building prototypes, experimenting with different designs, and learning from their mistakes. They never did get the flying machine to work, but they learned something even more important, that together they could overcome any challenge. The memory faded, replaced by the harsh reality of the mine. Rosa gripped the controls tighter, her determination renewed. She wasn't just rescuing Amelia, she was fulfilling a promise, honoring a bond that had been forged in childhood and strengthened by years of shared dreams and adventures. Another memory surfaced, a cold winter night, huddled around a campfire, sharing stories and dreams under a blanket of stars. Amelia had confided in Rosa about her fear of being trapped, of being alone in the dark. Rosa had squeezed her hand, promising to always be there for her, no matter what. Rosa pushed the iron Mantis forward, its drills biting into the rock. She could almost hear Amelia's voice, whispering words of encouragement, urging her onward. She had to get to her, she had to keep her promise. The past fueled her present, giving her the strength to face the dangers ahead. The iron Mantis roared, a metal beast driven by love and memories. The tunnel ahead was completely blocked by a wall of solid rock. Rosa consulted her map, her brow furrowed in concentration. According to Amelia's surveys, the main tunnel was just beyond this wall. This was it. This was the final obstacle, but the rock was thick and the mine was groaning around her. Another tremor shook the tunnel, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Rosa knew she was running out of time. She had to break through, and she had to do it fast. She engaged the iron mantises' drilling claws, their diamond-tipped bits whirring to life. The machine shuddered as the drills bit into the rock, sending sparks flying. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of grinding metal and shattering stone. Inside the cockpit, Rosa focused all her energy on the task at hand. She adjusted the pressure, monitored the temperature, and listened for any signs of weakness in the rock. She pushed the Mantis to its limits, ignoring the alarms and the warning lights. Outside, the tunnel walls began to crack and crumble. The entire mine seemed to be on the verge of collapse, but Rosa didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Amelia was counting on her. Suddenly, the drills broke through. A small hole appeared in the rock, followed by a rush of air and a faint glimmer of light. Rosa widened the hole, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Amelia," she yelled, her voice hoarse. "Amelia, can you hear me?" A faint voice answered, barely audible above the din of the mine. "Rosa, is that you?" Tears welled up in Rosa's eyes. She had found her. She was alive. With a final surge of power, she ripped the remaining rock away, creating a passage just large enough for her to crawl through. She shut down the iron mantis, grabbed her lantern, and squeezed through the opening, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The tunnel behind her groaned, threatening to collapse, but Rosa didn't care. She was one step closer to rescuing Amelia. The tunnel on the other side of the rockfall was even more precarious than the one Rosa had just navigated. Support beams were snapped like twigs, and the air was thick with dust. Amelia lay pinned beneath a heavy beam, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Her eyes widened when she saw Rosa, and a weak smile flickered across her lips. "Rosa," she whispered, her voice raspy, "you came." "Of course I came," Rosa said, her voice choked with emotion. She knelt beside Amelia, her heart aching at the sight of her friend's suffering. "I told you I would." Rosa quickly assessed the situation. The beam was too heavy to lift by herself. She needed to find a way to move it without causing further collapse. She rummaged through her bag, pulling out a small hydraulic jack. It was a long shot, but it was the only thing she had. "This might hurt," Rosa said, her voice gentle, "but I'm going to get you out of here." She carefully positioned the jack beneath the beam, taking care not to disturb the surrounding rubble. With a grunt of effort, she began to pump the handle. The jack slowly extended, lifting the beam just enough for Amelia to wriggle free. "Og!" Amelia cried out in pain, but she bit back the scream. "Almost there," Rosa said, her muscles straining. "Just a little bit more." Finally, Amelia was free. Rosa helped her sit up, supporting her weight. Amelia's leg was badly injured, but she was alive. That was all that mattered. "Thank you," Amelia whispered, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I knew you wouldn't give up on me." "Never," Rosa said, her voice firm. "Now let's get you out of here." She helped Amelia to her feet, and together they began to make their way back towards the hole in the rock. The tunnel groaned around them, threatening to collapse at any moment, but they pressed on, their determination fueled by hope and the unwavering bond between them. They were a team, and they would face this challenge together. They would escape this mine, and they would never be separated again. The journey back to the Iron Mantis was even more perilous than before. The tremors were more frequent, the collapses more violent. Rosa supported Amelia, her arm around her waist, shielding her from falling debris. They moved slowly and carefully, their every step a gamble. As they reached the hole in the rock, a section of the ceiling collapsed behind them, sealing off the tunnel. They were trapped again, but only for a moment. Rosa quickly used her tools to clear the debris, creating a narrow passage. "After you," Rosa said, urging Amelia forward. Amelia hesitated, her eyes filled with fear. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," Rosa said, her voice reassuring. "Trust me." Amelia squeezed through the passage, and Rosa followed close behind. They were back in the tunnel where the Iron Mantis waited, but it was in even worse shape than before. Support beams had buckled and the walls were crumbling. We need to get out of here, Rosa said, her voice urgent. Now. She helped Amelia into the Mantis's cockpit, securing her in the passenger seat. Then she climbed into the pilot's seat and fired up the engine. The machine sputtered and coughed, but it roared to life, its metal limbs trembling with effort. Rosa steered the Mantis forward, retracing their path through the collapsing mine. The machine struggled to navigate the treacherous terrain, its gears grinding, its engine straining. But Rosa pushed it harder, knowing that their lives depended on it. They encountered more collapses, more obstacles, more near misses. But Rosa and Amelia worked together, their teamwork honed by years of friendship and shared experience. They cleared debris, reinforced support beams, and navigated around obstacles, their determination unwavering. Finally they saw it, the light at the end of the tunnel. The mine entrance, freedom. With a final surge of power, the iron Mantis burst out of the mine, its metal limbs scattering debris in its wake. They were out, they were safe, they had made it. The town of Dust Devil Gulch erupted in cheers as the iron Mantis emerged from the mine, a plume of steam billowing behind it. The miners and their families, who had been anxiously waiting, rushed forward, their faces etched with relief. Jebediah the foreman stood to the side, his jaw hanging open in disbelief. Silas, however, was nowhere to be seen. He had disappeared after the initial collapse, likely fearing the consequences of his negligence. Rosa brought the iron Mantis to a halt, its metal limbs settling heavily on the ground. She cut the engine, and the machine fell silent, its gears cooling with a soft hiss. She turned to Amelia, her eyes filled with concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Sore," Amelia admitted, "but alive, thanks to you." Rosa smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "We did it together." She helped Amelia out of the cockpit, supporting her weight as they stepped onto the ground. The crowd surged forward, surrounding them with cheers and congratulations. "Rosa, you're a hero," someone shouted. "You saved her life," another exclaimed. Rosa blushed, embarrassed by the attention. She wasn't a hero, she had just done what anyone would have done for a friend. But as she looked at Amelia, her eyes shining with gratitude, she knew that she had done something special. The townsfolk carried Amelia to the doctor's office, their faces filled with concern. Rosa followed close behind, her hand resting protectively on Amelia's shoulder. She knew that Amelia would need time to heal, both physically and emotionally. But she also knew that Amelia was strong and that she would recover. As the crowd dispersed, Rosa noticed a figure standing in the shadows, watching them intently. It was Silas, his face contorted with rage. He glared at Rosa, his eyes burning with hatred. "You haven't heard the last of me," he snarled, his voice low and menacing. "This isn't over." Rosa met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "Yes, it is, Silas," she said, her voice firm. "It's over for you." She knew that Silas wouldn't let this go easily, but she wasn't afraid. She had faced down a collapsing mine, and she had rescued her best friend. She could face anything. The following day, a town meeting was called. The townsfolk gathered in the dusty square, their faces grim. The near disaster in the mine had shaken them to their core. They had lived in fear of Silas for too long, and now his greed had almost cost Amelia her life. Rosa stood before them, her voice clear and strong. She recounted the events of the previous day, detailing Silas's negligence and his reckless pursuit of the mother lode. She spoke of Amelia's courage and of the importance of standing up to injustice. "We can't let Silas get away with this," Rosa said, her eyes flashing with anger. "He put Amelia's life at risk, and he's been exploiting us for years. It's time we took back our town." The crowd murmured in agreement, their anger rising. Jebediah the foreman stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "I can testify to everything Rosa has said," he said, his voice trembling. "Silas has been cutting corners for years, ignoring safety regulations, and pushing us to work in dangerous conditions. I was too afraid to speak out before, but I can't be silent anymore." Other miners came forward, sharing their stories of exploitation and abuse. The townsfolk listened intently, their faces growing more resolute with each passing moment. Finally, a grizzled old miner named Hank stepped forward. "We need to do something," he said, his voice raspy. "We can't let Silas continue to control our lives." "What do you suggest, Hank?" Rosa asked, her eyes filled with hope. Hank paused, then said, "We need to form a union. We need to demand better working conditions, fair wages, and a share of the profits. And we need to hold Silas accountable for his actions." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices filled with enthusiasm. They had found their solution. They would stand together, united against Silas's greed and oppression. They would take back their town, and they would build a better future for themselves and their families. Rosa smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that they could overcome any challenge as long as they stood together. They were a community, and they would not be silenced. Silas, enraged by the formation of the Union and the growing defiance of the town, stormed into the Golden Nugget Saloon, his face red with fury. He slammed his fist on the bar, scattering glasses and silencing the room. "Who's behind this?" he roared, his voice echoing through the saloon. "Who's been filling your heads with these ridiculous ideas?" The townsfolk stood their ground, their eyes filled with defiance. Rosa stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I am Silas," she said, her voice clear and strong. "And so is everyone else in this town. We're tired of being exploited, and we're not going to take it anymore." Silas sneered, his eyes filled with contempt. "You think you can stand up to me, Rosa? You're just a mechanic, a grease monkey. You're nothing without me." "I'm more than you'll ever be, Silas," Rosa retorted, her voice rising. "I care about this town, and I care about the people who live here. You only care about gold." She stepped closer, her eyes blazing with anger. "You knew that mine was unstable, and you forced Amelia to work anyway. You put her life at risk, all for the sake of the mother lode. You're a greedy, heartless monster." The townsfolk gasped, their faces filled with shock. Silas's carefully constructed facade of respectability had finally crumbled. "That's a lie," Silas bellowed, his face turning purple. "Amelia's accident was her own fault. I had nothing to do with it." "Don't insult our intelligence, Silas," Amelia said, her voice weak but firm. She had been helped into the saloon by Hank and Jebediah, and she stood beside Rosa, her eyes filled with determination. "I warned you about the instability of the mine, but you ignored me. You were too obsessed with gold to care about safety." Silas's face contorted with rage. He lunged at Amelia, his hand raised to strike her. But before he could reach her, Rosa stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "You won't touch her, Silas," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Not while I'm around." She stood tall, her eyes locked on Silas's, her body radiating a fierce protectiveness. The townsfolk surged forward, surrounding Silas, their faces filled with anger. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and utterly defeated. The reign of Baron Silas Blackwood was finally coming to an end. With Silas subdued and the town breathing a collective sigh of relief, Rosa helped Amelia back to her small cottage on the edge of town. The doctor had set Amelia's leg, but she needed rest. Rosa lit a lantern, its warm glow filling the cozy space. The scent of lavender and chamomile, Amelia's favorite, hung in the air. Rosa helped Amelia settle into her bed, fluffing the pillows and drawing the blankets up to her chin. Amelia looked up at Rosa, her eyes filled with a depth of emotion that Rosa had never seen before. "Thank you, Rosa," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything, for saving my life, for standing up to Silas, for always being there for me." Rosa sat on the edge of the bed, taking Amelia's hand in hers. Their fingers intertwined, and a spark of electricity passed between them. "You would have done the same for me," Rosa said, her voice soft. "I don't know if I'm as brave as you," Amelia said, her gaze fixed on Rosa's. but I know that I would do anything for you." They fell silent, their eyes locked in a silent conversation. The lantern light flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air grew thick with unspoken failings, with a realization that their friendship had blossomed into something more. Rosa gently brushed a strand of hair from Amelia's face, her touch sending shivers down Amelia's spine. She leaned closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "Amelia," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I." "Oh, this—" Before she could finish her sentence, Amelia reached up and gently touched Rosa's cheek. "I know, Rosa," she said, her voice barely audible. "I feel it too." And then they kissed. It was a soft, tentative kiss at first, a gentle exploration of uncharted territory. But as their lips met, their feelings surged to the surface, and the kiss deepened, becoming passionate and intense. It was a kiss that spoke of years of friendship, of shared dreams, and of the unwavering love that had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. It was a kiss that sealed their fate, binding them together in a bond that nothing could ever break. The lantern light glowed brighter, illuminating their faces, their eyes shining with love and hope. The stone and steel of the mine, the greed of Sila's, all faded away, leaving only them together in that small cottage, bathed in the warm light of their newfound love. The next morning, the sun rose over Dust Devil Gulch, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. It was a new day, a day of hope and promise. The townsfolk gathered in the square, their faces filled with determination. They had formed their union, and they were ready to negotiate with Sila's. But Sila's was gone. He had fled in the night, leaving behind his gold mines, his saloon, and his ill-gotten fortune. He was a coward, a bully who couldn't face the consequences of his actions. The townsfolk celebrated their victory, their cheers echoing through the canyon. They had taken back their town, and they had freed themselves from Silas's tyranny. They were finally free to build a better future for themselves and their families. Rosa and Amelia stood together, hand in hand, watching the celebrations. Amelia's leg was still sore, but her spirit was strong. She looked at Rosa, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "What do you think we should do now?" Amelia asked, her voice soft. Rosa smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. "I think we should stay here," she said, her gaze sweeping over the town. "We should help rebuild Dust Devil Gulch, and we should make it a place where everyone can thrive." "I'd like that," Amelia said, her hand squeezing Rosa's. "And maybe," she added, her eyes twinkling, "we could finally finish that flying machine." Rosa laughed, her heart soaring with joy. "I'd like that too," she said. They embraced, their arms wrapped tightly around each other. They had faced danger, adversity, and loss, but they had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more in love than ever before. Their love had conquered greed, fear, and the darkness of the mine. It was a love that would endure, a love that would light up Dust Devil Gulch for generations to come. They would face the future together, hand in hand, their hearts filled with hope and the unwavering belief in the power of love. The end.